Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson read-along podcast. I'm B.
And I'm Zack.
And this week, we read Percy Jackson, The Titan's Curse, Chapter 7, Everybody Hates Me, But the Horse.
Oh no, thank God it's just the horse. Only the horse that likes you.
I feel like I've never met a horse that likes me, so I'm kind of jealous of Percy, in a way.
Well, for me, I'm just friends of the horses. Like, I'm a legitimate Tina Belcher.
Yeah, I was never a horse person, I guess, as a kid. I kind of found them scary. I think that had a lot to do with, like, my dad, like, instilling in me the fear that he was just like, okay, well, don't put your finger near its mouth because it could bite your finger off. That's what my dad always said about horses. And then don't go behind them because they could kick the shit out of you and kill you. I feel like those were the two contributing factors. Also, I just, like, had a bad time horseback riding every time I ever did, so that's just my personal experience.
So, like, if you saw Chiron, you'd be like, nope, half man, half horse, outie.
Well, no, because he's like a person, so I could talk to him and be like, hey, don't kick me. And he'd be like, cool, whatever, thanks.
Hop on my back, small child.
Yeah, like I could hand him some oats and be like, hey, you're a bro, you're chill, you're not gonna kick me. But, like, you can't talk to a horse like that.
I feel like Chiron would look at that and just, like, slap the oats out of your hand. And he's just like, I want steak and, like, a fine Pinot Noir.
Yeah, actually, I wonder what his diet is, because I don't remember them describing it. Does he eat like a person?
He does live forever. He is immortal. I feel like he'd be a person that can eat what he wants and still lose weight.
Sort of like most, like, tall, thin guys I know who just, like, show up and just, like, down a whole pizza and somehow are, like, really thin still. I'm very jealous of people like that.
Yes, speaking of jealousy, what did you think of this chapter?
I thought it was good. So they didn't, like, really start on their quest yet, which I guess makes sense because they kind of have to figure out the Oracle stuff and, like, the logistics of the quest. I feel bad for Percy. It seemed really sad. On the one hand, I felt sad for him, but also, like, if you, like, look back on the past couple books, he has been, like, the center of attention for most of what's been going on in Camp Half-Blood for a while. So as much as I understand that he wants to help Annabeth, it is, like, a little bit weird that he just always makes things about himself. Like, I don't know. He always wants to do the thing.
So it's like that one thing in all these books where we have the titular characters named after, you know, the title of the book. You know, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, Darren Shawn, that's another examples. And you have, like, that problem of just, like, because the character has his name on the book, that means he has to do everything. Percy Jackson's the exact opposite, where it's almost like he steps back a little bit. Instead of, like, books like Harry Potter, where it's just like, Harry had to do everything. He had to pull the sword out of the hat. Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
Exactly. I mean, even Chiron has that conversation with him, right? That, like, he and Talia are very similar in that way that they don't really think, and they often are just like, oh, I want to do this. I mean, he has less confidence than Talia because she just has so much unending confidence that she could do everything herself, which is, you know, not, like, the best trait to have when you're doing, like, these life or death quests.
It's like the characteristic of Zeus. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing, just you just calculate them as teenagers now. You have Thalia and then you have Percy, who are pretty much, like, almost like carbon copies of their fathers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, they have the same flaws as their godparents or whatever.
Oh, man, that sucks. Like, if you really think about it, that really sucks. Like, man, like, I'm just anxious all the time. Oh, that's because your father was anxious. Oh, well, this is stupid.
Well, I mean, isn't that how it works, though? Because I think anxiety is sometimes genetic. So, I mean, in some ways, like, yeah, like, when I have a stomachache, I'm like, oh, right, yeah, my dad had, like, gastrointestinal issues, too. Like, oh, maybe it's genetic. Oh, great, thanks, Dad. Thanks for the gift. Like, that's kind of just the way genetics work sometimes, where you, like, get traits you're not always happy with.
But not personality traits. I feel like if you're going to get personality traits, it needs to be something that's, like, you learn rather than, like, you inherit through genetic code.
This is nature versus nurture argument. So you could say that, like, to some extent, there is, like, people's nature, like, they are genetically predisposed to acting a certain way because of, like, whatever, like, emotional reasons they have, like, brain chemistry reasons, but also, like, the way they're raised. Like, that's the difference between Percy and Talia and, like, other normal kids, is they weren't raised by their parents, but they still have, like, the sense of their parents within them.
I guess it also makes sense because Thalia's mom was a movie star, whereas Percy Jackson's mom worked at See's Candy in Grand Central Station.
Yeah, they have a different sense of, like, confidence, probably because of that, too. Like, yeah, just the way that they were treated in real life as opposed to, well, I guess it's still real life, like Camp Half-Blood, but it's just, in the mortal world, also that the way that they were raised. I think Percy's a bit more humble, but still I don't know, like we said, it's hard to say if they're, I mean, I guess, yeah, like Rick is trying to make a point, I think that, Percy makes things about him a lot of the time, like people say that, like, oh, especially in Sea of Monsters, they, like, make a point to, like, show that, Clarice is, like, not super stoked that he ends up going on that quest because it was her job. Like, it seems like no matter whose quest it is, it's always Percy's, and I could see why that would be frustrating for other campers.
It's the exact same philosophy as, like, dodgeball when picking teams. Like, obviously, if you're going to have the big buff guy, you're always going to pick the big buff guy rather than, like, the wimpy nerd. I mean, it's not like I've had that experience before. Ha 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 ha. No, I like that idea of just, Percy Jackson kind of like backtracks it a little bit, and he's not the person that goes on the quest because his moment to shine was 2 books ago. And yes, he kind of like, what's the best way to put it? He like trudged his way into the quest in the second book. And most likely what's going to happen here is he's going to do the exact same thing. He's going to butt heads and somehow end up in this quest because they wouldn't have a book if it was just Percy Jackson, the Titan's Curse. But Percy's not really in the book. He's actually sulking in his room.
Right, exactly. It's like just flash sideways, I guess, to all the stuff that Talia and, like, the group are doing to go and, like, rescue Artemis and, Annabeth. But then it would just be like Percy's time at home, his winter break, and he's just, like, on his computer, going sledding, making cookies.
It totally reminds me of the scene in Jurassic Park 3 where they're like, all the people are on the boat and this boat's slowly sinking and they're trying to call Alan Grant's wife. His son picks up the phone and he's watching Barney the dinosaur while they're all drowning. It's the exact same thing. Like, Percy's like making a sandwich and Thalia's just like fighting like a demigod. And he's just like,
yeah.
What do I want on the sandwich? PBJ? Oh, not much. And Thalia's like fighting for her life.
Unless, like, the series made a concerted effort to be like, okay, well, Percy's in the title of the book, but really we're going to focus on someone else. But, like, that, I could maybe see that happening, like a real plot twist where the other characters do get to shine and he does have to, like, stay home and, like, learn humility or something. That'd be, like, a very funny plot twist, but I don't think that that's going to happen. Obviously, like, at the end of this chapter, he gets encouraged by his mom to go on the quest, even though that it's not his job. So
no, that like totally reminds me of like choose your own adventure books where it's like you discover the secret treasure map that's going to take you to adventure and glory, or you could just stay home. And if you pick stay home, yeah, you would do that, you nerd.
And then it just like ends, like the book ends. Exactly, like
yeah, the book just ends.
So obviously there needs to be a plot.
But I really enjoy the opening of this book just because it has Percy Jackson and Grover Underwood basically hauling a corpse up into the big house, and they're just like, man, this sucks. This is the pits.
Yeah, like a mummy, like a gross mummy that they're like heaving. And then I think Percy even says that he like, who knew a mummy could weigh so much? And then he like hits her weird mummy head like on the door frame. And he's like, oh, great.
While this is happening, he's also kind of like reminded of like, this sucks. Even the oracle came down, but didn't give me a prophecy. Wine, 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 wine.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of get what he's saying a little bit because like he walked into the oracle attic, whatever, and just didn't hear anything, and then it literally like walked across the entire camp just to read out this prophecy that he's not a part of. I could see why he would feel a little left out by that, but I feel like he's been included in so much. It is like frustrating. The only like justifiable reason I could see as to why he wants to go on this quest is that Annabeth is in trouble, but Grover is going on the quest, and Grover also cares about Annabeth, and it sort of feels a little bit like selfish in a way that he sees himself as the only person who can save Annabeth, when it's like, okay, other people care about Annabeth also, like you're not the only person who cares about her. I don't know.
So it's like the situation, the old trope of I love her, so I must go and protect her type of situation where it's like every book,
Yeah, that's
every
true
young
too.
adult book where a person goes missing, the love interest is the one, because I'm the only one that knows where they are because I love them and I know everything about them. I know every move they're going to make, so I'm going to save them. They've left clues specifically for me.
Yeah. I mean, that also has to do with his dreams too are telling him exactly where Annabeth and Artemis and everything is happening. Like he envisions that cave and he keeps seeing what's happening with them. And at this point, I'm seeing that it's probably like an actual vision thing and not just like a metaphorical
It's a trap.
dream he's having. Yeah, exactly. He knows what's happening. So now he sees that all of these people are going on this quest and it actually is they're playing right into his hand. I get it's not Kronos though, that voice, so that's we'll get into the weird dream he has, but yeah.
For me, when it comes to this chapter, the opening of this, what I love to talk about is I always love the idea of what's called shoe leather, where it's like the idea that you're going to go from point A to point B, but you're going to explain it rather than just going, he went through the door and then he's outside, rather than he opened the door and he had to pull the knob and go through. Here it's a little different, whereas the Oracle like walked out, and now the beginning of the next chapter is, oh yeah, we have to
put that back,
yeah.
Right? Yeah, it doesn't even occur to you that they would have to heave it back into the attic.
It reminds me of this movie that I watched called Trick or Treat, where the whole movie's like a satanic panic movie, where there's a part where like this demon rocker like pulls a woman out of the TV and she turns to ash. Literally the next scene is the main character vacuuming up the ash.
I like that. Yeah, exactly. It kind of like, it makes you feel a little bit more grounded in something as absurd as like a mummy walking across a camp. Like, oh, I guess they do have to like heave it back into the attic, even though it walked its way there.
Even though it'd be funny if it just like walked back itself, but I think it's even more comedic that, they have to like pick up this corpse and like throw it back into the big house.
And the fact that it was Percy and Grover, because they're just like a very funny duo, the two of them. Like, especially Grover is a good like comedic relief for a lot of what's going on. Even like you could tell that he's like Percy says the line, Grover says, well, that was gross. I knew he was trying to keep things light for my sake, but I still felt really down. The whole camp would be mad at me for losing the game to the hunters. And then there was the new prophecy from the Oracle. So there's like, you get a good sense of their friendship too. Like, the scene is a good chance for you to like establish how Percy's feeling in the wake of what the Oracle said, and also how everyone else is treating him, with this sort of like weird mix of like pity, like, I don't know, disappointment. Like, oh, they could tell that he seems sad about what's going on, but like, let's joke about it, because that's what Grover does. That's his job in the story, mainly.
Yeah, it's like the idea of just powering through it, but also the idea of like mulling over what they're saying with the Oracle, because a lot is going in through it, rather than like in the first book, like it's very straightforward of like, oh, you're going to lose what matters most in the end. Here it's a lot more cryptic, just because a demigod will fall by his father's hand.
Right, that could mean so many things, and especially, like, I thought it was pretty cool in this chapter that we get, like, a sort of council meeting or whatever, like, this big group of all of the different cabin leaders, and they have to, like, talk about what the Oracle means, and I thought that was really interesting, because that's kind of what you and I do when we first read oracles in these books, right? We sit around and go, okay, well, what could that possibly mean? Who's going to be involved in this? And that's what they're doing in this scene. Like, they're sitting around going, okay, so wait, they're like, let's go by line. So like we need 5 people, but the hunters and the campers work together. Okay, but maybe we have to stay out of the desert. Like, they're like going line by line to try to figure out what they should do, which I thought was funny.
Again, that's the idea of it being in reality. Obviously, when they would get a prophecy, they would have a meeting like this and discuss they would dissect it. Most of the prophecies that we've had so far have been so quick, and they have to deal with the fate of the world, that they don't have time to discuss them. Here, it's the first time that they actually, it's important, but not as important as like a war between Zeus and Poseidon, or that the camp's going to go down. They actually have a chance to actually sit down, discuss it, and I like that just because it seems like an actual thing that, camp counselors would do. If there was something bad that was going to happen, they would sit down and talk to their campers and like, okay, who's going to go on this quest? Because it's vague enough they didn't call anyone by name. And I love that when you have Rick Riordan basically in reality is like, oh yeah, obviously kids would have to make this decision, so kids are going to be the ones dictating this, whereas Dionysus is like literally reading about effing wine.
He doesn't care at all. Yeah, I thought that was funny. just the fact that the Oracle itself contains, like, 5 will go west or whatever, like, we know that there will be 5 people, so they need to, like, really figure out the nitty-gritty of who those 5 people are. And then with the hunters involved, which we already know that there's such, like, a fraught relationship between them and the campers, so there's going to be, like, a disagreement of, like, oh, well, all the hunters should go, because of course it's Artemis, but then it's like, okay, well, it says right here there's supposed to be campers working together with the hunters, so there's, like, them, like, butting heads, like, okay, then, of course, you know, Dionysus butts in and goes, well, maybe the reason people are going to die is because you try to work together, which I thought was kind of a funny, like, thing for him to say.
Well, yeah, because it's the idea of that Dionysus is helpful for non-helpful sake. My favorite part, though, is like they're talking about this. Is like, oh my god, Pinot Noir is having a big comeback this year. As he's reading this.
Yeah, he gets like really excited about the wine magazine, even though he can't drink wine, which is fun. Like he accidentally lays out the wine like for this weird spread where they're like at a ping pong table and they're all discussing it. I love like how evocative the scene is too. Like you really feel like grounded in this weird world where it's like a mix of just like these high stakes magical things that they're talking about, but also they're at a camp, so it's around a ping pong table, and then literally Grover is like taking ping pong balls and putting Cheese Whiz on it and eating them because he's like a goat, which I thought was like a good detail. Speaking of Grover, we kind of jumped over just a little bit that because of what's been going on with camp, he hasn't been able to go and look for Pan, and so that's kind of like a little side thing that they acknowledge in this chapter too. I guess we didn't talk about it for a while since like the last book.
Because they didn't really bring it up because you keep forgetting that, you know, that's Grover's quest is to be a seeker. I mean, yes, the second book was just about, you know, him getting lost, but figuring out why all the seekers have been failing. Here it's just like you just don't think about it. I guess, you know, Chiron wanted Grover on the special mission, but it makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, Luke is like turning all these kids evil, so the idea of like getting as many kids as possible before like they're corrupted by Luke, because, you know, Luke could come in and go like 32 skidoo and be like, hey kids, do you hate your parents? Yeah. Well, why don't you join me and my kooky gang of Kronos fans?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like recruiting people, and it's pretty easy to recruit people in some ways because they're, of course, going to have animosity for their kind of jerky parents who, like, sometimes don't show up and even claim them, really, or there's, like, a lot of abstract reasons as to why the demigods would take his side.
Well, it's also the idea, again, is like Luke could also lie and say, they're the enemies, they're trying to kidnap you and do all these things, whereas I just want us to be free. And look, we get on this boat and we're going to Panama. It's going to be so cool. And you get to hop on with my friends. Have you seen my friends, the Cyclopses? They're so cool.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Percy said, I felt kind of selfish because I'd totally forgotten about Grover's life ambition, which is kind of a hefty thing in a way, like, oh, he totally forgot about this really big thing in Grover's life, but we also kind of forgot, and it's kind of calling you out in a way like, oh, there's a lot of stuff happening, and it's easy to hyper-focus on the stuff happening with Percy because it's, like, centric to his story, like, the series is about Percy. But, you know, it's sort of reflective in some ways as to how Percy thinks of what's going on. Like, he's always thinking about himself and, you know, completely forgot about his best friend and what his priorities are.
So when it comes to that, what I was thinking about is, you know, yes, it's a big focal point, but also it's the idea Percy Jackson is our titular character, but again, I love the idea that Rick Riordan boosts up his supporting cast a lot. Like, you want to know how Grover's going to, you know, find Pan, or if he's ever going to find Pan. We want to see how Annabeth is going to be, and, like, is she going to be okay? Or, like, what's her deal with her family? Thalia, the same way. It's like, what is her deal? And I love that about Percy Jackson is the supporting cast always has a moment to shine, as, you know, Percy Jackson has a moment to shine. I love that because a lot of books don't do the thing like a lot of supporting characters pretty much are like there to just be like, wow, can't you believe how awesome Percy is? Man, he can really swing that sword really well. Gee williker.
Yeah, like you don't want him to be what did you say, Gary Stu, like where he just does everything perfectly.
Oh yeah, no. So you don't want him to be a Gary Stu, and here it's a lot different because in Percy Jackson, you know, you don't have that because if you, like, a lot of books, like, you can take out, here's a great example. I'll give you a perfect example. So in Harry Potter, Harry isn't the smartest person. If Hermione wasn't there and she was killed by the troll, they would have lost.
He's too dumb to do all the things he does.
No offense to Harry Potter, but it's like one of those things, if you take out like a central character, like you take out Hermione or you take out Ron in certain elements, the whole book falls apart.
Right, they need each other, which I guess is true to this story too, to some extent. Like, they're just things that other characters are better at. And I think as the book goes on, we're gonna, I guess, hear more about that kind of theme of working together and playing to certain people's strengths and accepting, like, sometimes you're not the right person for the job. Because even, like, the Oracle is all about working together and accepting, like, okay, we have these differences with the hunters as compared to the campers, but we have to work together because that's what the Oracle says, and we can't just be like, oh, well, I'll do it because it's my job. And they all have, like, different reasons for being invested in this quest.
But yet, here's the funny thing. The Hunters of Artemis don't want Percy because he's a man.
Yeah, because he's a boy, which is funny because they're like, we don't want a boy. But then he's like, well, Grover, what about Grover? And they're like, well, he's a satyr, which is technically not a boy. And then, like, Grover gets offended. But I guess he's, like, a goat person, so that doesn't count. Like, they don't want a hero.
And Grover's like, did you hear that? And Zoe Naish's like, what? He's like, do. What is that? Oh, that's when you threw me under the bus?
Yeah. This is also an interesting scene because you can see how, I guess, quick to please Grover is with the hunters. Like, because he has like this weird obsession with Artemis. He's like, oh, I gotta serve Artemis. And it doesn't even occur to him that Percy also wants to go. And he, like, doesn't do the math like, oh, right, there has to be 5. So he just jumps ahead to volunteer. And then Percy's, like, sitting there like, wait a second. No, that leaves me out, though.
Well, yeah, and then it comes to the idea again. It's, Percy Jackson isn't like the big man on campus anymore. It's, he's been there for a while. He's like a tenured person. He's like, well, you've already gotten your chance literally twice.
Yeah, right? 2 summers in a row.
And, Thalia has never gone on a quest, so she wants to go. And, Zoe wants to go with Bianca and Phoebe.
Yeah, she's sort of like a secondary character in, like, the Hunters that I didn't really remember, but...
But she's their best tracker.
Yeah, she's their best tracker, which apparently... Oh, I guess that kind of makes sense, because what she was, like, good at capture the flag sort of makes a little bit of sense.
Well, yeah, she, like, threw, like, all of Ares' cabin. Like, they mysteriously broke all their bones accidentally.
Yeah, Phoebe. Yeah, it's funny, Zoe says, I shall go, of course, and I'll take Phoebe. She is our best tracker. The big girl who likes to hit people on the head, Travis Stoll asked cautiously. Zoe nodded. The one who puts the arrows in my helmet, Connor added. Yes, Zoe snapped. Why? Oh, nothing, Travis said, just that we have a t-shirt for her from the camp store. He held up a big silver t-shirt that said Artemis, the moon goddess, fall hunting tour 2002, with a huge list of national parks and stuff underneath. It's a collector's item. She was admiring it. You want to give it to her? I knew the Stolls were up to something. They always were, but I guess Zoe didn't know them as well as I did. She just sighed and took the t-shirt. I thought that was, like, a really funny interaction between... Because, like, also Zoe, as we've learned, is, like, weirdly archaic in her language and maybe doesn't always understand how to interact with people, which we see during this scene because she says thy, and then Talia's like, no, it's your, and then she awkwardly is like, your?
So the great thing I love about that entire interaction is the idea that, Zoe's really old, like older than dirt itself. And that shows that, the Hunters of Artemis live forever. So obviously, their idea of, like, language isn't going to progress because they're pretty much in, like, a weird stasis because they live out in the woods with, like, their moon goddess. I just, like, imagine, like, they get a kid from the 90s and their entire lingo's from the 90s. Like, wow, that's so radical. Like, that's so ripping. And it's like, did you hear the new Kurt Cobain album?
Yeah, dude, I have bad news for you.
Yeah. Wait, what do you mean I have bad news? At least Michael Jackson and David Bowie's still alive, right? Yeah.
Yeah, oh my god, that's really funny. At the same time, when you think about it, like, they also, like, stay the same age, right? Like, they don't just, like, stay immortal. They also, like, look the same, right? That's, like, the implication, because Zoe still looks really young, even though she's been around for thousands of years.
Speaking of that, it's kind of interesting because they talk about Bianca and how she's changed in the couple days, and I want to say it's a neat description, but also it's like Rick Riordan's like, I don't know really how to describe girls.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean, because he's, like, very descriptive of, like, making her pretty. Like, sometimes I feel a little bit like Rick always has to, like, speak to the attractiveness of girls sometimes when he describes them, which is, like, my one complaint. When
it comes to, like, Rick Riordan, I mean, yes, I mean, it's, like, one of those weird things where it's like when you describe a character, yes, please describe them as best as you can and you use as much descriptive tags, but when, like, the only characteristics you have is Persian goddess.
Yeah, not great. That one's not great.
Comes like a little weird, but
right, yeah.
I mean, there's no problem with it because like Rick Riordan, I know he writes characters really well, and it's like just one of those things that you improve over time because it's just like you can only call a person pretty for so long.
Because then it's just like, okay, we get it. But also, I don't think it's that weird of a thing because I have to keep in mind that Percy is the perspective of what we're reading. Like, he's telling us the story. So he's noticing these things because he's a teenage boy. So he'd be like, oh, like, that's a pretty girl because it's around his age. So, like, that kind of, like, tracks, I think, as far as, like, what he would pick up. It's not, and it's also, like, not too, like, hyper focused on that in, like, a way that feels gross to me. Like, I think you can definitely read some books written by dudes where, like, every woman is described in a very, like, objectifying way.
They had lush lips and they had like chocolate covered skin, and it's just like you can keep going on and on. Like you can use like weird, I like to call it sexy words.
Oh yeah, well, like I saw a post that was making fun of that. I think it's more of a problem in books for older kids and also adults where it's just like she boobed boobily to the boob. Like that's like kind of sometimes how it feels to read descriptions of women where it's just like very focused on their physical traits. But I don't find it to be that way here.
So when it comes to like Percy Jackson describing stuff like that, that's perfectly fine because he is a regular teenage boy and love does exist in this world, and that it isn't just everyone's a bunch of like asexual people and they're just like just like I love you, Padme. I love you.
I think Zoe is asexual to some extent because she has like no interest at all in dudes. But that could also just be that she's been a hunter of Artemis for so long that she's just like not invested in like the sort of childish, flippant things of having relationships because she's very focused on her mission of being a hunter.
The way I was looking at this was the Star Wars prequels and how like there is no love in those movies whatsoever except for the contrived love story that makes no sense. And it's like in Percy Jackson, how they're going to describe things.
And it's not like believable.
It makes sense to have them to describe them the best way they can for a kid because kids will pick up on things like that, but not like weird, like sexy talk. Like they're not going to be like, and Annabeth had luscious lips and she had golden hair, like that was like the color of golden wheat. Like they're not going to talk about that as like she had blonde hair, she was kind of pretty, and sometimes she puts on makeup.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very sensitive to those kinds of things. Like if a description gets too like weird. I mean, like even to some extent they talk about the attractiveness of Luke too. So I feel like it's not too disproportionate of a thing.
Well, no, there's like when it comes to Percy Jackson, it's okay because it's a kid's book and they're not trying to sex up the kids. Because I think Rick Riordan even says that don't sex up my kids.
Yeah, which I guess was his problem with the movie for sure, because they age them up so much. And I think that that's like what happens with so much YA is they age up the characters and then they like cast really attractive people in the movies and they're like, oh yeah, like everyone in the Hunger Games is really beautiful now, and they're all just like walking around and having their like weird love triangle. Even
though in theory half of them should all be like malnourished.
Yeah, right, because they can't eat. Exactly. Like, yeah, it's like not even realistic to the world to believe that stuff. And you'd think the same thing. Like the only, I guess, justification for the fact that there are a lot of like pretty people in Percy Jackson is the fact that they're all children of gods. So I guess that sort of contributes to like, oh, I guess, yeah, like if your parent is Zeus and like Aphrodite and all these different godly beings, then yeah, okay, I kind of would get that you'd have like a sort of like Grecian like statuesque look to you because that's what gods look like.
Oh yes, especially when it comes to this chapter, especially with Aphrodite and how like a bunch of like the Aphrodite cabin starts like throwing shade at the hunters, which I love that dynamic.
And then the hunters are jerks to them. Yeah,
it's like, wait, so you don't want to go on this quest? That's the first time I've ever heard a daughter.
Let me find the line because it's really funny. So it's Selena Beauregard, who's a daughter of Aphrodite, and she says, Percy is right, Selena Beauregard said. 2 campers should go. Oh, I see, Zoe said sarcastically, and I suppose you wish to volunteer. Selena blushed. I'm not going anywhere with the hunters. Don't look at me. A daughter of Aphrodite does not wish to be looked at? Zoe scoffed. What would thy mother say? Selena started to get out of her chair, but the Stoll brothers pulled her back.
I love that because you have, again, these secondary characters, like, even though we don't really see them all that much in the books, like, you understand their personalities, like Selena and the Stoll brothers and Beckendorf. Like, I love that about this, is that even though it's a small cast, you can still fall in love with like minor characters because they're all awesome.
Yeah, they feel pretty fleshed out. And I like this scene because it gives you a little bit more of a feeling for the different like secondary characters' personalities, which you don't have a lot of time, like a lot of opportunity to really get that sense in. Like, I think the first two books especially, it feels very rushed that they go on a quest immediately as soon as they show up for the summer, so you don't get to really see the campers that much as far as like how they interact with each other. So I like this scene for that reason.
Then you have the great characterization of Zoe Nightshade, who is just the ultimate like resting witch face and just like throwing venom at people to the point of where it's just like melting their faces off.
Yeah, I don't like Zoe. She's mean. She's very petty, and I think she takes any opportunity to like mess with people and tease people. And this is obviously a time where they're supposed to be like coming together and trying to help each other. And she seems like the most petulant out of all of them, maybe because she's been a hunter for so long. She's very like strong-headed and has a lot against the campers. Yeah, she just needs to chill out a little bit. Even her old-fashioned vocab kind of speaks to how, like, much of a stick in the mud she is. Like, she just has no... You know, like that meme with the sign that says no fun? That's Zoe.
Oh, no. She seems like the type of person that would be like, okay, children, playtime, and just like a room with like a single wooden horse.
Yeah, it's like, wow.
She's like so staunch and evil.
Yeah.
Even though, okay, I kind of like love Zoe in the way of just like, it's great to have a character like this that is so like, she's so ancient in her ways, but yet she's like, she has the body of like an 11-year-old girl, so it's even funny to take her seriously.
Yeah, right. She's this tiny child. With like a lot of opinions.
Yes, she has like that weird like British like stoutism to her almost.
Yeah. I imagine her accent to be sort of like in every movie that takes place in ancient Greece where they aren't speaking Greek, but it's sort of like this transatlantic like theatrical accent. Like that's sort of what I'm picturing her to speak.
That's exactly the language that I'm thinking of. It's kind of like, why thou have you forsaken me? Percy Jackson, thou is thy man.
Yeah, exactly. Like she's very old-timey, and then like Talia's making fun of her for that, which I mean, rightly so. It's kind of awkward the way she talks, and
it's either that or she's gonna have like a weird like flapper voice, where it's just like, well, we got to keep going. I can't.
Well, no, it's been thousands of years, right?
Yeah, it's been 10,000 years, but she like got stuck in the 1920s, and she just loved the lingo so much. What's this? We're gonna do the Charleston and the Jitterbug. And afterwards, we're going to dance at a flagpole?
She really enjoyed the 30s because she's just like, wow, the Great Depression, like my personality.
No, it's like her favorite vacation spots is every time there's ever been an economic depression, she just like goes there to have tea.
Yeah, she's just hanging out like, wow, everyone seems really bummed out, just like me.
Oh, it feeds my energy, keeps me younger. Oh, I might be turning into a 10-year-old now.
Yeah, I think even the vocab thing has a lot to do with, like, they're trying to characterize her as, like, out of touch, which I think, that, like, really comes across, like, the way that the hunters live. It's not just that they live forever, but they also live, like, this nomadic life where they're not interacting with people a lot, so I think that's why she doesn't pick up, like, modern vernacular the same way that someone, I mean, like, because Chiron's been around for a long time, but he still speaks like a normal person because he spends a lot of time with campers.
That's just scary, especially, like, now he's just like, okay, kids, we have to eat over there.
Yeah, Chiron trying to be like the cool teacher who's just like, he's like trying to plank with his weird horse body, and they're like, this isn't working.
He's like dabbing with his horse legs.
Exactly. Doing like Fortnite dances and stuff, and they're like, oh god, please stop.
Oh no, Chiron totally plays Fortnite with like Dionysus. They're both on like a team together.
Yeah. Oh, do you think that Dionysus would even care, though, to even do that?
Oh yeah, no, I feel like he doesn't care about his campers, but I'm sure if he played like MMOs and stuff, he would really get into them.
Oh yeah, I guess. Because they do play card games together. I could see that. That's pretty funny. You get a strong sense of Zoe's personality in this scene. Like, it really comes across how, like deliberative she is too. Like, she just is like, okay, I made the decision. This person's coming. And she interestingly chooses Bianca to go with them on the quest, which is like kind of a crazy choice in my opinion.
Bianca's like a really fascinating character in the situation. I have some nice things to say and not so nice things to say because I was looking at the characteristics of her specifically. But the way they describe her, she's changed a little bit. So she's like, I was amazed how different she looked after a few days with the hunters. Her dark hair was braided like Zoe's now, and you could actually see her face. She had a splash of freckles across her nose, and her dark eyes vaguely reminded me of someone famous, but I couldn't think of. She looked like she had been working out, and her skin glowed faintly like the other hunters, as if she was taking a shower in liquid moonlight.
Yeah, I guess that's the immortality thing, the glowing, like, because she is impervious to death unless she dies in battle, so she has this, like, immortal glow.
Yeah, but so when it comes to her characterization here, and she's like, senpai, you want me to come on this quest? And, like, the way to describe her, she's very, I don't like to use this word, but I guess the best way to put it is she's very mousy in the situation where she's just, like, she, like, almost squeaks. And she's like, what? You're letting me come on this quest? Wait, you could do that?
I mean, yeah, she just started, right? Like, she's been with the hunters for a few days.
It's like the old trope in, like, cop movies where it's like, well, I'm only 2 days out of the academy. I'm ready to, like, go for it. Whereas Zoe's like, I'm 3 days to retirement.
I guess it would be kind of silly if they introduced a new character and then she stayed at camp the whole time. So just plot-wise, I mean, like, peeking beyond the curtain of, like, okay, well, I guess, I don't know, Zoe has her own motivations to be like, oh, you have to prove yourself. And that does sort of make sense with her personality. Like, oh, she's very pragmatic and focused on, like, training this new hunter that she's acquired, so maybe bring her on this quest will be a good opportunity for her to prove herself. But also, like, looking beyond that, like, as far as the plot goes, of course Bianca's gonna come, because what is the point of having her around if she's not gonna be in the book?
It's one of those things where you can kind of need to have her in the book because, she made this again, I think it's a terrible choice. People have disagreed with us, but I'm sticking with it's a terrible decision. She didn't even really tell Nico all that much. She just, like, whispered in his ears. Oh my god, I just thought something so stupid. B, you know what she did?
What?
She carelessly whispered into his ear.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad we're on the same page. Yeah, I mean, that's what she did.
She's very careless, but here it's like you have to have, obviously, again, if you don't have her go on the quest, she can't learn anything. If she stayed with the Hunters of Artemis, like, in camp, she'd just be like their pep squad and nothing would happen. She would actually probably stay with them. If, there's going to be a lesson that has to be learned, either through, fighting and, like, figuring out or, like, falling in love or finding out that, her love of her brother is what breaks her internal bond with Artemis, like, those things, you need to have her go on the quest because, again, you need to have another character that is so fresh to the idea of ancient mythology, because Percy Jackson isn't that character anymore. He was that in the first book. Now you need to have another character that can, like, explain the myths, like, what's that? And then obviously someone have to explain the myths.
Right, exactly. They're the self-insert, like, audience character, and Percy's kind of getting more accustomed to things. I mean, we've gradually seen him adjust, and he still is, like, not as aware of ancient Greek things as, say, Annabeth, who's been around for way longer, been at camp for way longer. So there's still opportunities for him to learn, but Bianca's, like, so new. She literally just started, and it's hard for me to even really feel sorry for her that she has to go on this quest because she is the one who decided to be a member of the Hunters. So it's sort of like, okay, well, let's see what you signed up for.
Yeah, her number came up and she's part of the draft.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, sorry, that's too bad that you have to go on this dangerous quest where someone might die, but, like, you wanted to do it.
How much training do you have? I got 3 days, sir. You're green as grass, but you'll do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's kind of a crazy thing that she gets picked, but,
well, yes. But again, it's the idea of, Senpai noticed her, so she has to go.
She has to go.
Yes, and you know what? Yeah, Zoe is one of those characters that's like take or leave, but it's the idea of you need that character because, again, it's the idea of you need the infotainment of having a character that doesn't really know much. Because again, Percy Jackson, he knows some stuff, but he isn't going to ask the questions like in the first 2 books. Like he understands the spiel.
Yeah, I think because he'd also be a little bit more embarrassed to like ask questions because he isn't as new.
Like he's had 2 years to open up a textbook and like read all the myths. Like you would think that would be like
right. Like I would read up on every myth if I was him. Like because it's just it. I feel like that would provide a lot of context to what's going on in his life, but he doesn't ever seem to know what's happening.
The second you realize that mythology is real, my butt is going to Barnes and Noble and buying as many books of mythology as humanly possible. Because
I never really thought of that, but that's such an obvious thing that someone would do if they found out they were a half-blood. Like, oh, I guess I should really research that. And I even think of like the real Camp Half-Blood in Brooklyn where they do teach kids mythology, and it's like, I feel like it's in your best interest to probably know these stories a little bit better, Percy. It's been a couple summers. You almost died several times. Your friends keep going missing. Maybe look into that a little bit.
And yet here we are talking like we know this. Is like, maybe we should open up a mythology textbook and actually learn some of these myths.
I mean, the difference is he's not worried getting spoiled. Like, if anything, it's in his interest to know what's going to happen. But if I were to, like, you know, really research mythology before I read this book, then it might be not as interesting as what happens in the plot, because it's not one-to-one exactly, but there's, you know, characters that you meet that are from mythology that do similar things to what they do in the myths that they're based off of. So I think, like, if I were to, I don't know, that's like my main hesitancy for that.
Specifically, the main reason why we do it like this as well is because Rick Riordan's, the specific reason that I have these books is to teach kids mythology. If we research mythology firsthand, how can we really gauge how well, you know, Rick Riordan is teaching kids mythology?
Right, that's true too. Exactly. There's an intentional way that they're written where lesser known mythological things are just called by their name, and then we've talked about how more well-known, like, cultural zeitgeist mythology things, like, say, Medusa, are, like, hidden by their name. Like, it's not called Medusa, it's Auntie M's, like these little, like, subtle things that they do in the plot to kind of hide the fact that it's based on a certain myth, until Percy figures out and goes, oh right, you are Medusa, you're the snake-headed person who turns people to stone, and then you have the context for what's happening in the plot. But I feel like if I researched a bunch of stuff, then it would kind of, like, ruin a lot of things for me. But I don't know, maybe, you know, write into us if you read mythology a bunch before you read Percy Jackson and how you feel about that, because I don't know, I feel like it might be a bit spoilery, personally.
Well, yeah, and it's also those things where it's like, if I were to bring up mythology, I mean, yes, we get things right and wrong, but it's like one of those things, like, if I bring something up, I have the chance to potentially spoil B, and that's kind of like one of those problems, is it's like, I might say something really vague and I might know the answer to, but there's a specific reason on why I'm not saying it. So they decide, you know, we figured out who we're going to go. We're going to have Thalia as the muscle, Grover as the comic relief, Zoe as the ice witch, Bianca
as the young blood.
Yeah, you're there. And then Phoebe as, insert Friends joke here.
Phoebe as the tall person who beats people, I guess. She's there as, I think, like a token hunter, I think, because she, like, really exemplifies, like, their scary, intimidating nature.
The funny thing is, the Stoll Brothers, the shirt they gave her, they didn't describe it as red.
Wait, are you trying to make a pun that I'm not picking up?
A red shirt?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay, like, she's, like, the expendable one that probably is gonna die because we don't care about her and we just were introduced to her character.
So when you have a character who I like to describe as the person that's almost barely characterized and is just a meathead. Yeah, something's gonna happen to them. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. So, you know, everyone's decided. Percy's a little sad because, you know, he's not the titular character. And he kind of, like, sulks off.
And then Grover feels really bad because he tries to, like, unvolunteer after he realizes, like, oops, wait, Percy wanted to go. And then, of course, Zoe's like, nah, we don't want a dude, so that's not going to work out. And we don't want a hero specifically. Like, she has something very specific against heroes. So then Percy sulks off to his room, and then Grover comes up behind him and is just like, oh, well, actually, no, he skips dinner is what happens, actually. Yeah.
So Percy, like, sulks out, and it's, like, just, like, early 2000s, like, emo band music starts playing, and he goes to his cabin and skips dinner because he's a rad kid.
Yeah, some Simple Plan starts to play, like, do you ever feel like breaking down? You lock yourself in your room.
Whatever happened to me?
Yeah, just all the Buzz ballads.
Yeah. But basically what happens is, he skips dinner. And apparently that makes people concerned because, Percy Jackson's known for his stomach.
Yeah.
And Grover is like, hey, buddy, are you okay?
Sorry, whoops, I did a bad one. And then he's like really sad and nervous too. So then Percy just kind of is like, it's fine, because he's afraid that because when Grover gets upset, he just starts eating like random objects around the room. So he's just like, okay, it's fine, it's really fine. Please do not like eat my bed.
I'm just like imagine like Grover comes in with like those gigantic novelty like teddy bears, but it's in the shape of a gigantic minotaur.
It just says, I'm sorry. It has a heart, like, in its arms, and it says, sorry.
Yeah. But I love that about Grover is that he's a good person that, like, obviously he's going to apologize even though he didn't do anything wrong because,
yeah.
Grover actually has a skill in the team. He can track Artemis. He has nature magic.
Yeah, and I don't know, then Chiron comes in because, like, I don't know, they notice that Percy didn't go to dinner, and Chiron shows up and is like, so, I know that you're sad, and that's sad that you want to go and help Annabeth, but you're kind of a butthead sometimes, and so is Talia, so, like, maybe it's for the best that you're not going, is basically what he says.
It also doesn't help that last chapter that they literally almost murdered each other and captured the flag.
It's true, because they disagreed with each other because they're so strong-willed, both of them, that they didn't, like, see eye to eye. It's like, oh, we're co-captains, and so if they're on, like, the same level playing field, they're both gonna try and get everyone to listen to them, and it's them just butting heads. Even though that they are technically friends, they just don't really, they're not very good at communicating and collaborating.
Well, also the idea of having Zoe Nightshade with them, so they're just, like, she's just pushing all their buttons. Oh no, it's like a nuclear bomb going off almost. It's just like putting in the right codes.
Yeah, and then even Chiron said something interesting where he said, oh, like, it's probably good that you didn't go. Also, I almost volunteered for the quest, but then the last line is like, oh, well, if my dad is Kronos, then that would be really bad if I went on the quest, because if a parent kills their child, then... that would make a lot of sense for Kronos to do that, because Kronos doesn't care about his children at all.
Well, it's also the idea, again, it's like if Chiron goes and dies, who's going to train the next, level of heroes, or the next age of heroes, as it will, rather than, it's the idea of it's campers, not camp counselors supposed to go through. I left my Dean Martin record on replay. Can't go, sorry.
Yeah, he just, like, awkwardly leaves. Like, yeah, sorry, not sorry. I feel a little bit bad for you, but also, like, it would be such a disaster if you went, which is fair. It's a fair assessment of the situation, and Chiron is trying to be responsible because that's his job, so,
So then there's this other thing where, like, Chiron, like, points at Riptide, and he says this, and he says, I pulled out Riptide out of my pocket and set it on my nightstand. I didn't see that I was being used for anything but writing Christmas cards. When he saw the pen, Chiron grimaced. It's no wonder Zoe doesn't want you along. I suppose not while you're carrying that particular weapon. I understand what he meant. Then I remembered something I had told me a long time ago when he first gave me this magic sword. It has a long and tragic history, which we need not go into. So Zoe has like a past with the sword.
Yeah, but we don't know what it is, because then Percy says, I wanted to ask him about that, but then he pulled a golden drachma from his saddlebag and tossed it to me. So he's like, all right, call your mother. Sorry, I can't tell you about, like, the spooky history of your weapon or any of this other stuff going on.
Again, it comes back to the idea of it's like, the sword is old as sin as much as Chiron and the gods are, because, people can die, but swords with names have power. Every magical sword has a special name to it because, it's outlasted so many people that name becomes feared, such as, Ice, Backbiter, Riptide, Excalibur.
Sting.
It's the idea that's like, if a sword has a name with it, obviously someone had to have named that sword, so it has to have a history no matter what.
Yeah. We're not going to find that out right now. Again, very Percy Jackson to be like, so there's a spooky history to this thing, but we're not going to get into it now.
We'll explain it later when it becomes essential.
Yeah, when it becomes a big plot point, probably, that we're setting up Chekhov's gun this second. Or I guess Chekhov's sword.
Or Chekhov's pen. Click, click.
So yeah, it comes time for him to call his mom, which is an interesting scene.
Yes, I guess it's time for Percy Jackson to call Collect.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this, or should I just like...
I could talk about it. It's very simple. It's Percy Jackson throws a coin and he's like, oh, Iris, accept this offering. And he's like, where would you like to place a call? To my mom. And then all of a sudden, there's a big bubble, and he sees his mom hanging out with this sexy older gentleman, the way they describe it.
Yeah, in his 30s with like his salt and pepper hair. Like a very he describes him as like an actor who would be in a TV show about police or something, I think is what he says.
So the way he's describing it, I'm just imagining Rick Riordan sitting down on his keyboard, and he's just like, yes, and he looks like me an awful lot. Salt and pepper hair, late 30s, looks like he could be an undercover cop.
Yeah.
In a TV show.
Yeah, handsome teacher man that he calls an actor. So he's just like, oh, so the actor dude walked away.
No, just imagine Rick Riordan, he's writing this, and then he turns his head and there's a mirror, so he's looking at himself while he's writing.
Beautiful. No, I don't think he's talking about himself.
No. We're just having a joke, but it's one of those things where it's, obviously Sally Jackson has a man over, which this could end really awkwardly if Percy Jackson called it any other time, because they could be gross, making out, grody.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, the scene reminded me a lot of you've seen the movie adaptation of Where the Wild Things Are?
Yes, a long time ago.
I saw it pretty recently, and there's a scene where Max really wants to show his mom his blanket fort or something like that, and then she's like, okay, there in a minute, whatever, and she keeps putting it off, and then he goes into the living room and she's hanging out with her, I don't know, her man friend, her new boy in her life or whatever, and he gets jealous and upset. And it's a similar thing where this single mom, as she's trying to get out there, and I mean she has a life outside of Percy, so it's a little bit annoying that they portray him as getting kind of grossed out and creeped out by what's going on, where it's okay, well, she was with Gabe for a while and he was a piece of garbage, and then they turned him into stone with Medusa's head, so she kind of needs to figure out what to do from there. She wants to get out there and start dating someone and doing other things, because Percy's away for most of the year going on these crazy quests and risking his life. So I mean, she needs something to do other than just sit around waiting for him to return or die.
Well, she needs to fill a hole in her heart almost. So it's well, Percy could be dead, so I guess I need to have a handsome man in my life.
She was in a relationship with Gabe for such a long time, so it's she deserves to be with someone who seems nice. I don't know. I don't know anything about this character, but he seems like a nice enough guy.
We forget that, Sally Jackson's a person with thoughts and feelings and desires and loves. And it's also the idea of you want her to hit a home run with a man because, you just want her to be happy. And Percy is the idea of, it's my mom going out there? Gross. It's my mom.
I mean, that speaks to kind of how kids view their parents sometimes, especially at that age where, you see them as your caretaker, as a certain figure in your mind, but sometimes you don't see them as fully fleshed out people who have thoughts and wants and a life outside of you and providing for you. And, as however old Percy is, what is he, 13 now? Something like that. I don't even remember how old he is in this book, but yeah, he's still a tween, or I guess a teen now. And he doesn't really have the perspective to realize that his mom would do other stuff when he's gone, other than just sitting there twiddling her thumbs until he came back.
Well, to most people, you would think it'd be great expectations. I have to keep everything perfect until Percy comes back. Everything has to be the way it is. Just perfect. But then, I like the idea of having Mr. Blowfish.
Mr. Blowfish is his name, which not a great name.
No, it's a Bond villain name.
Yeah, it's not great. I hope that his name doesn't reveal anything about his personality, because I hope he's nice, because Sally Jackson deserves everything in the world. She's the best. She's the best mom in literary history. She hasn't died, and she's really nice and supportive. And I mean, in this scene, she's super supportive for
She
her.
literally drove 8 hours to drop her kid off.
Yeah, right?
I love Sally Jackson. She's a top tier mom.
Yeah, she'll do anything for her son. And in this case, she kind of does the thing that's against her better judgment, which is go, well, I know that you're probably going to be in a lot of danger, and you could just come home and spend time with me, but actually I think that if you think it's the right thing to go and get Annabeth, then you should do that thing. Which is honestly the nicest thing she could ever do, because her biggest fear really is something happening to Percy, and she understands he's in so much danger all of the time. But instead of trying to be like a helicopter mom and overprotect him, she's like, you're a demigod. You have to go out and do this thing. And, that's what she even said. She's like, you're old enough now that I can't tell you what to do. So you should just do what you think is important. And I really like that scene. I think it really shows how good of a parent she is, that she really cares about, who Percy is as a person.
Well, it's like also the idea, again, of, she has all these thoughts and feelings, but also she's intelligent. She knows if Percy came home, all he would do is just worry and check in and try to figure out ways to sneak out of the house. Like, it's easier just to say, just go for it, son. Just hit a home run, swing away.
Because she knows he would just leave anyway, probably after worrying for a while at home. And did you get the sense a little bit that it's kind of funny that he calls and she's like with this dude that she obviously has like a thing for? And it's like, she's like, no, please don't come home. Don't come home. It's fine. It's fine. No, honey, I believe in you and I want you to go out and succeed. But really, she just like wants to hang out with this hottie from her class. Like that could be read into this a little bit.
Well, it's the exact same thing of like Professor Oak is like, wait, Ash, your mom's home alone? Here's a Pokédex. Try to collect all of the Pokemon and then you can come home.
Anyway, I'm going to head on over to your house.
I got the hots for your mom. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh my God, I never thought of that. That's very funny. But I don't think that Rick is trying to say that that's her main motivation, but that's like one of her motivations, that she's trying to be more distinct from her kid. Like, he has his life and she has her life, and they, she can't constantly be telling him what to do.
Like I said before, like, this world exists with love and it's not totally an asexual world. Obviously, Sally Jackson isn't just like, oh, because of Gabe, I've sworn off all men. I'm going to join the Hunters of Artemis.
Oh my God, what a plot twist that would be, right?
It's like they go to her house, so it's like, hey, maybe you should join the Hunters of Artemis. Except she doesn't turn into like 11-year-old girl. She's just the same like mom form.
She'd still be like a mom, so it'd just be like one mom, but just being bossed around by Zoe, who still looks like a child.
She has like one of those like fanny packs, and she's like packs stuff with like bows and arrows, and like it's almost like a
don't forget your angry eyes.
Don't forget your angry eyes.
Yeah,
just a Zoe.
And I got you a sandwich and a bunch of monkeys. Get in there. And some shoes and a hat.
And here you go, Zoe. Don't forget your men-hating eyes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, though. No, Zoe never forgets, though, because she always has them on. That's the thing. She never puts those away.
You want to know my secret, Captain? I always hate men.
Yeah, that's just like her catchphrase, basically.
Okay, like, to people that love Zoe, I actually really love Zoe.
No, she's a good character. It's funny to tease her and imagine her as like a very specific, like, feminist blogger on Tumblr who's just like, men are trash, which like I could easily see her as.
If she knew what the internet was and what a Tumblr was and what an iPad was, oh, you know exactly what type of blog she'd have. Let me tell you about privilege. As she like adjusts her glasses.
A bunch of like a flowery like collage that says like boys are gross and stuff. Like that's what her blog would be, 100%. The only difference would be like she'd be still talk all old-timey, so she'd just be like sending messages to dudes being like, "Thy are trash."
No, thou art rubbish.
Rubbish, right? Yeah, rubbish would be the word she'd probably use.
Oh man, I really would love like someone to start. No, actually, don't start this. Don't start this.
Oh my God, yeah, like a joke blog as her.
Yeah, as a joke blog as her. Oh my God, it'd be so great. Today I saw a boy today. I almost wanted to throw up.
Yeah, very funny. Anyway.
So Percy's mom like pops the bubble because, Mr. Blowfish is coming back and, he's bringing back some wine.
He's like, yeah, okay, sorry, I love you, bye. And just ends the call.
Yeah, pop. Well, it's also the idea of it's like, now they have the comedic timing of, just imagine like the parents of demigods, how do you explain their kids? Like, yeah, so, oh, you're married, are you? Like Mr. Blowfish, oh, no, I have a kid. Is the father in the picture? Oh, no, he's a deadbeat. But my son always just leaves mysteriously. Yeah,
he's away at boarding school, I guess. Yeah, how do you explain that to a new person? That's a lot of awkward explanation going on.
It's like in Harry Potter, it's like, I think it's with Seamus. I might be getting this wrong, and I can already hear Sarah yelling at me.
Yeah, oh yeah, the very meta joke of Sarah hating every Harry Potter reference we ever make because they're wrong.
I think it's Seamus, where it's like, my mom was a witch and my father was a milkman. Got a nasty shock when he found out.
Oh yeah, I think that is Seamus because he's the one with like the really strong Irish accent and is obsessed with explosives. I'm pretty sure, but yeah.
Here's the scenario before we move on. It's like Sally sits him down. It's like, so my first person that I ever loved was a god. Oh God! Don't tell me it was like super buff and like.
Yeah, you have to like live up to that, right? Yeah. So anyway, the father of my child is a god, but you're pretty good, I guess.
Oh, what about like sloppy seconds? Actually, yeah, I kind of married another guy, and he was like a big fat guy that like abused me a lot. Oh, so. What is this now? Oh, no. You're the best out of all of them.
Yeah, they're all jerks in different ways. You actually seem like the most chill, probably. But that's just because Poseidon's a bit of a flake.
Oh, I love this scenario. It sounds so funny. If you really think about like the nitty gritty, it's hilarious.
Yeah, imagining this scenario is interesting. But again, this is like a new dude, so I don't know to what extent she's like talked to him about what. Probably nothing. Like he asks like, oh, how's your son? It's like, well, long story. We'll get into it later.
So the bubble pops and Percy decides to go night-night again because, every time he goes to sleep, he's just like, oh boy, what type of weird nightmare world am I going to be in tonight?
I feel like every time he goes into his room, he like always has some sort of really fraught conversation via iris message, and then he just passes out. Because he even says like he doesn't remember falling asleep. He just like falls asleep and then has this very horrible vision. I guess it makes sense that he's tired all the time though, because he's always having horrible nightmares and then having to go on like really intense quests and do things. So
or Percy just has narcolepsy.
Maybe that would be an interesting detail to his character.
So, Percy Jackson goes to sleep and he sees the new horrific images of Annabeth, and she's in the cave and she's struggling, she's tired, like she's almost going to be crushed by the ceiling for some weird reason. And then all of a sudden, Percy Jackson hears a voice that isn't Kronos, but, it's still creepy, deepy.
Let me just read his description of the voice because it's interesting. How's our mortal guest? A male voice boomed. It wasn't Kronos. Kronos' voice was raspy and metallic, like a knife scraped across stone. I'd heard it taunting me many times before in my dreams, but this voice was deeper and lower, like a bass guitar. So this is...
Wow.
The Seinfeld theme song.
Yeah. It's all a trap, B, because it turns out that in the voice comes out with Luke and some chains. It turns out he's chained up Artemis. So I was doing some research about this shock of all shocks, and it turns out that, gods can't be killed, but they can be imprisoned and trapped. That's why, we have Dionysus stuck at the camp, but also you can have, like, gods in chains.
Okay, that makes sense. So she's in celestial bronze chains and she's bleeding ichor, which apparently is like the golden blood of the gods. And this is all along what the trap was, is that we trick Annabeth into holding this rock for Luke because she cares about Luke, and then we trick Artemis into holding the collapsing cavern for Annabeth because she is obviously going to do the right thing all the time, and then she's trapped forever under this endlessly collapsing thing that I guess she can't lift even though she's a god. I guess it's like a specific cave. I don't know. It's probably some sort of magical thing that I don't understand.
I guess she doesn't lift, bro.
Yeah, right. She even lift.
But then, the plan also continues with remember the winter solstice, and that if Artemis isn't there, she's like the real big advocate against Kronos, and, there'd be another year wasted for planning, so they need her there. And she was also hunting an ancient creature. I love
how useless the gods are. Like, they're so useless, they need Artemis to be there to be like, hey, so the evil Titan who's trying to destroy life as we know it, we should probably do something about that. Like, do they really need her to know that? I don't know. I feel a little bit annoyed that they are so useless.
Well, it's also the idea of it's like the bane of Olympus might, destroy them. And I love the idea of kind of like backtracking, but I love the idea that they ask Dionysus and he's like, I don't know. I'm a new god. I don't care about that stuff. Back to Pinot Noir.
Yeah, and then like Chiron suggests that it might be a couple ocean monsters that he knows, but they're like the size of skyscrapers, so we would probably notice if it was them, so it's not probably. Also, obviously, Poseidon would have given them word, and then Percy would have known about it. So, not them. We don't know what the Bane of Olympus is.
But Poseidon's already fighting his own war right now. He's up in the nitty-gritty in the celestial sea trenches.
Right, he's fighting against Luke with all of his decked out mermaid army with all their swords.
His mermaid army. It sounds so metal, but yeah, no, Luke doesn't have the mermaid army. Poseidon does. Luke has like a siren army.
Probably, yeah. He's recruiting all sorts of rando people for his cause.
We have this idea now, again, of Artemis is now trapped. And, again, it's the idea of trapping a god is a very, like, it's almost like killing a mockingbird. It's almost like a sin to trap a god.
Yeah, and I guess that you have to trick them in a way, and so that's why it's been so, like, convoluted.
It's also the idea of, again, you can also play into the god's tropes. It's like, oh, obviously if there's going to be a maiden in distress, Artemis is going to be there.
Right, she cares about maidens. Yeah, that makes sense. So because she's the god of maidens and whatever, and then obviously Annabeth was considering maybe being a hunter of Artemis, so this whole all kind of fits together, like, oh, of course I have to help her, but then she's trapped forever under this cavern. I don't really understand what the circumstances are, because you'd think, oh, a god could lift anything, it's a god, but, like, I guess this is a specific scenario where she's cursed to hold it forever.
Like, I know what it is, but it's like one of those things, is like, is there a specific myth, B, where some heavy load has to be lifted?
Oh yeah, Sisyphus. But I don't know if this is the same as, because doesn't Sisyphus like roll a boulder up a hill, so it's like slightly different?
That's one of them, B, but there's another one.
Oh wait, Atlas? Like the weight of the world?
I don't know.
I think it might be Atlas. Yeah, I think it's Atlas. Okay, that makes sense. Where the heck is Atlas then? Yeah, all I'm thinking is Atlas, because it's like the weight of the world. So it's like, oh, you're literally carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. I'm surprised Annabeth lasted that long if that's the case, because, like, geez, I could hardly carry my groceries.
What are you talking about, B? She lifts, bro.
That's true. She's pretty buff for a tiny child.
Remember, this is also like mid-2000s, so she's got that girl power.
Yeah, just that alone can really carry her through.
Oh, I love that. I love when I bring that up. It's like just imagine like looking at that like 1,000 years from now, and here we have an artifact that says girl power. And
it's like on one of those like black wristbands you could get at Hot Topic.
Yeah, exactly. It has like the bunny. You remember those cartoon bunnies you could only get at Hot Topic?
Oh, Happy Bunny?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I had a bunch of those because I was insufferable in middle school. In case you didn't tell from everything about me, I was insufferable in middle school. Wore those shirts and like the same like Green Day sweatshirt for way too long. Anyway, that was my depressing uniform.
Oh, for me, it was like, if we're talking about like insufferable things that we used to wear, I remember for like 2 years, I had this Invader Zim like hoodie that was just Gur.
Yeah.
It was just Gur.
Uh-huh.
And I would wear it, and I would wear all of my anime t-shirts. Oh god, it was, this is a dark time. This is before the Empire, before the dark times.
Yeah, I had a Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends t-shirt. I had a couple of those, actually. A lot of, like, movie Harry Potter t-shirts of just, like, the cover of, like, The Prisoner of Azkaban and stuff like that.
The first fandom shirt I ever got was a whole, like, it looked like a metal cover, but it was just Lord of the Rings, and I was, like, so psyched for it.
Yeah, I think the first fandom shirt I ever got, I think, was probably Where the Wild Things Are. Like, my mom was always getting me Where the Wild Things Are themed t-shirts, I feel like.
Again, it's, like, almost a crime that there isn't just, like, a Percy Jackson t-shirt, like a Camp Half-Blood t-shirt at, like, Hot Topic that you could easily buy. So what ends up happening is Percy Jackson wakes up in the dead of night, and there's something lurking in his rooms. Something evil. Something metal. It's a horse. A obsidian black Pegasus. OCs, eat your gosh darn heart out.
Yeah, this is adorable, because it's just him, like, adorably interacting with a horse. This makes me think a lot of, like, that scene in Over the Garden Wall, where it's just like, and we stole a horse, and it's just like, we didn't steal Fred, he came with us. He's his own horse, he can decide what he wants to do, and he just goes, I want to steal. Yeah, that's the voice I imagine this horse to have, is the horse from Over the Garden Wall. Fred, I think is his name.
No, in my head, when I'm thinking of this horse, I think it has the voice of Ron Perlman.
Oh, that's a good voice for him. Yeah, wait, what's the name of the horse again? Blackjack. Blackjack. Very cute, adorable name.
Again, it's the idea of it's an obsidian black horse because it's the one that Luke had in the last book that Percy set free.
Right, and then they steal it from the boat. I forgot about this horse, and then they just bring him back, and you're like, all right, okay, the pony's back. I guess this is the horse he's going to be using to go and find the rest of the group and save them and warn them about what's going on.
What are you talking about? It's like a buddy cop movie. It's like, what is it, like?
Him and the horse.
What is the Tom Hanks movie with him and the dog?
Is it Turner and Hooch?
Yes, Turner and Hooch. Thank you. It's like that. It's like a Turner and Hooch type of movie.
Why do I know that? That's a movie I've never seen, but I just internalized as a weird thing, I guess.
See, I'm rubbing off on you a little bit.
I'm just absorbing weird pop culture stuff that I've never even watched. Anyway.
I love the idea of just, it's an obsidian black horse, and it is the most metal thing in the world just because it just sounds, again, like an OC. It's like, well, you see, my horse is completely pitch black, and it's awesome. And he loves me so much. And when we're flying, he actually sings to me. He actually covers to like MCR.
I want this horse. Sounds like a great horse.
And he doesn't like preps either.
Yeah, they're too basic for him. Anyway, this is really funny because then Blackjack starts talking about the hippocampi and how he's like, and then Percy groans and he starts to describe that the hippocampi are always asking for his help because he's just like, hippocampi would ask me to help them with their problems, and they would have a lot of problems. Beached whales, porpoises, cotton fishing nets, mermaids with hangnails. They'd call me to come underwater and help. I'm
just imagining the situation where Percy Jackson has to go down and help a mermaid with her hangnail. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, it just like shows up with like a nail file. Anyway, so I guess another one of his sea friends needs his help. I don't know what that means. I have a suspicion that it might be, I don't know, that it might not be what he thinks it is, and instead it's like Tyson needs help with something, or it's like it's not just, you know, another hangnail on a mermaid.
Oh, so you think like half of this book is he goes underwater and has like an epic sea battle for like the entire book, and then like, oh, hey, look. It's almost like they correlate as almost if there's a split direction between 1 and 2s and A's and B stories.
Yeah, A and B story. Look at that. Yeah, so that's kind of all we know is that he has to go and help this thing, but then he realizes like, okay, wait, I'm probably not going to get back here because I have a sense that something's going to happen. So he grabs Annabeth's Yankees cap and like puts it in his pocket. And he said, on impulse, I stuck the cap in my pocket. I guess I had a feeling, even then, that I wasn't coming back to my cabin for a long, long time, which is the line that the chapter ends on.
You would think that Percy Jackson just already knows. Like, he should already have, like a suitcase already packed at the door just in case every time he leaves. He's just like, well, I can already go now. I already have my dead drop. But I like that about this chapter is you know that Percy Jackson, again, as both the narrator and as, you know, the audience character is like, yeah, I'm not coming back. I already knew it. So you already knew what you're going to expect.
I think after a while, too, he gets a little bit more of perspective as to how these things work. Like, okay, this feels like very fraught. Like, obviously a big oracle prophecy came forward pretty recently. Then he has like this crazy dream with his friends. So it makes a lot of sense that there's probably something important happening that he's going to be involved with.
And it's cool because, again, it's the idea of, you know, Percy Jackson's going to be on this quest and that, you know, he's actually going on a different quest because he's like a very, like, he helps people, is a very, you know, helpful person. So he's going to obviously help the creatures of the sea, as if it's like a 90s movie where that's the most important thing, where he has to, like, kill an evil businessman who's polluting the ocean.
Like Captain Planet.
And B, what is the name of the next chapter?
The next chapter is Chapter 8, I Make a Dangerous Promise. Great, Percy. Lovely. Always great that you're making dangerous promises.
Oh no, B. What do you think his dangerous promise is going to be?
Oh man, I can't even begin to guess. Like, is he going to be helping someone in the ocean and making a promise that he's going to help or somehow? I don't know. I feel like my best guess is that he's going to see Tyson, and then Tyson is going to ask for his help somehow with the war that Poseidon is waging, and then it's like a dangerous promise. But like other than that, he could make a million dangerous promises. He's a demigod. There's a lot going on in this world with the stirring and Kronos and Luke and the Artemis being trapped. Like there's so many things going on that any number of promises could be made.
Well, the one thing to keep in mind, B, is that in a lot of Greek dramas, a lot of the time it's making promises that you can't keep or fulfill.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely going to be a promise that he can't keep just intrinsically due to the plot is that way. Just crazy things happen and you can't expect them. So, yeah, I would never make promises if I was a demigod because, like, it's completely unexpected. Your entire life is unpredictable. Even though you have prophecies, they're still unpredictable because prophecies are like the vaguest possible thing.
Well, yeah, so also the idea of making promises, because promises in the Greek world were like punishable, like if you broke them, were punishable by death.
You said you would share that cookie. Now you must die.
So, B, did we get any emails this week?
Yeah, we got a few iTunes reviews. Hi, Zack and B. This is Leon again. I really loved it that you mentioned my email in your last podcast. It is so much fun to hear you talk about Holland. I actually meant a hedgehog suit. Oh, so it was suit. It wasn't sweet. So you were right.
Yeah, I was right.
Like dressing up, but the suite is also really fun. I think B was right about two kind of species. I would love to have the tame one as a pet. Yeah, so the tame ones are smaller. They're like the pygmy ones. They're very cute. Both are cute. Holland isn't all tulips and windmills, but I know that is typical for foreigners. When you're in Holland, let me know. I will show you around. I really liked it how you said, oh god, now I don't know how to say it. B actually said it right, except for the accent, but that's okay. Yeah.
Bilfstervik?
Bilfsterfeldik. Yeah, oh, I had it for a second, and then...
I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's Bliefstervik.
Yeah, okay. I'd have to, like, listen to the Google Translate again, but... So, keep practicing. A hedgehog in Dutch is eagle, not like eagle. We pronounce it, the G, as kind of a grunt. Eagle?
Eagle.
I can't. I'm sorry. I'm trying.
Eagle.
Yeah, my mouth is not designed to speak French. Or not French, Dutch.
It's almost like turning into, like, Grenda, almost. Hey, guys, eagle!
Yeah, eagle.
Or is it like, I know, like, I'm butchering a language, and it's terrible, but it's, like, the idea of it's, like, eagle, but the G's pronounced, like, eagle!
Like a grunt? Like, I don't know what that means. Like, eagle. I'm trying my best. Anyway, I'm sorry for butchering your language. I'm sure it's a very nice language. I'm just really bad at languages. So now you know that too. Greetings from Holland. And Blief Sterfelik. So, okay, sorry.
Did you see the little picture they sent us that they photoshopped?
Yeah, it's a little windmill with some tulips. It's very funny. Thank you for your lovely email, Leon.
So the next email we got is from 2B Pencil. Hi, Zack and B. From the latest episode of your discussion on Bianca's decision on joining the Hunters, I want to jump in and share my thoughts. When I was younger, I thought Bianca's decision was more understandable than when I reread the books later on in life. We often felt like it didn't quite belong anywhere and we tried really hard to fit in. For me, I remember thinking Bianca was really brave for letting go of her brother to join the Hunters. It is also to mention at some point, I hope this isn't considered a spoiler, that all of her life she had only her brother and no friends. You can say that it is an excuse on her part, but you know a little brother can be a little bit too much. There's also a myth on Orion that I want you guys to check out. He's the only guy who joins Artemis. It is one of my favorite myths too. I hope this email is not too long. Enjoy your week. From 2B Pencil.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get that justification. I mean, we kind of talked about a little bit whenever we've spoken about Bianca and her decision. Like, yeah, when you're a kid, you don't really think through a lot of the implications of your decisions. Like, sure, she's going to live forever. Like, this is a big decision that's going to impact her forever, basically, if she doesn't die. But you know, when you're a kid, I guess your concept of making friends and finding like where you belong is really important. That's like a good justification for why she does what she does. Like you said, you know, her only friend or the only close person she had in her life was her brother, and obviously they don't even know who their parents are. So there's a lot of questions about, you know, where does she fit in? And she obviously feels alienated in some way. And then, you know, you read in this chapter, she's immediately assimilated into like this culture of the hunters, and she looks different, and her hair is different, and everything about her is she's sort of completely assumed the role that she's had set out for her. And I think that I don't know, that's more attractive for younger people who feel like they don't have like a place in the world.
It's also the idea as well as when it comes to like, wait, why don't you like this? You know, it's independence. You know, she's a strong female character. Yes, but it doesn't necessarily, the idea of like cutting all ties with people and saying like men are grody isn't necessarily what I would consider a strong female character all that much. Like the idea of it's like you can both be a strong character and still like love your brother and like not like totally like just whisper in his ear that I'm leaving you. And the idea of like, you know, oh, he's my only person I've ever had as my friend and he's my brother and stuff. It's like, yeah, you can have that, but you're also in a camp now where you can make friends in all these situations rather than just joining like a creepy cult.
Yeah, that's true. She could just go to the camp. That's kind of a hard thing to justify if she could just go to Camp Half-Blood and find her people there. But I guess, you know, the hunters got to her first, so she made like a very impulsive decision because she didn't feel like she belonged anywhere. She's also very young, right?
Which you can't really blame her for that, but it's also the idea of you can blame her for that a little bit because it's like, as like a 12-year-old or 11-year-old, you can make some stupid decisions. Like you probably think it'd be like awesome to get a tattoo. It's like, let's just say, for example, you get a picture of like Justin Bieber as a tattoo. Like now as like a 20-year-old, like it's not looking so good anymore. Like Justin Bieber's turning into like a weird like giraffe now.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I make dumb decisions all the time, even now, and I'm 25. So, you know. I don't think I would ever be able to make a decision that big, but I guess when you're 12, you feel like you know yourself.
It's like the idea of you can make an impulsive decision, but also it's the idea of it's like, it might sound great at the time as like a kid, but then like, oh man, I really don't get your nose pierced. Then you do, and then you have smelling problems for the rest of your life. B, did we get any more messages?
Yeah, one more email. It's short and sweet from Leo, who says, "Hi guys, I love your podcast. It makes me feel so better in the week." And so that's, yeah.
I love the idea that, you know, we're able to brighten people's day. And that's like one of the greatest feelings in the world. Like we can contribute. Like it's just two friends talking, but you know what? You're all our friends. We all appreciate you and we love when we can make your day. So we did get a couple iTunes reviews. So we got one that says, "Pretty good PGO podcast." So it's rated 4 stars. "This is an entertaining podcast, to be sure, and as an avid Riordan fan, it is nice to hear other people appreciate his work and make something insightful comparisons to other YA literature. The dynamic between B has not read the series, I think, makes for a very interesting conversation. The biggest negative for me is that neither of the hosts seem to be particularly knowledgeable about mythology. I don't care so much about mispronunciation. It's ancient Greek, and as long as you know what it means, who cares? I think it would be a benefit of the show to have at least one occasional guest who knows mythology more in depth. For example, I just finished Book 2, Chapter 12, and Zach's explanation for the next chapter was related to pirates, but having read the book, I know sirens are what's coming up next, and pirate connection made no sense to me. Really a minor complaint, but I think it would be more interesting sometimes to delve more into the myths behind the PGO universe and explore how they're being retold." So what I would say about this is what we did, actually funny thing is we talked about this earlier, but it's like the idea of how we preserve the show is the idea of not trying to spoil each other by looking at the myths, because if you look at them, it's kind of spoilery, but it's also my job is to not spoil B, so I will make comparisons, but also the most important thing when it came to like, you know that the sirens are coming, but B does not, and that's kind of the integrity of our show.
Yeah, and you also know that the sirens are coming because you've already read it. So you could have said, "Oh, sirens are coming," but it's a joke that the pirates are coming or whatever, like misdirection. Like you're not gonna say, "Oh, sirens are coming up," because then you're spoiling what's gonna happen. So it's a careful balance to do. I mean, I'm gonna try my best to like continue to like look into myths when they come up. Like when we learn about Medusa, we'll talk about who Medusa is. When we learn about Circe, we'll talk about who Circe is in ancient Greek. But again, that's the point of the books, is they teach you ancient Greek, or sorry, not, or like ancient Greek history. So, and mythology.
As we review the books, we're also reviewing, the content in the books. And did Riordan do a good job with talking about mythology to a person that has never, ever read mythology? Because I like mythology, but there's so many different places, and my brain isn't really wired to like just sit down and like just read mythology, because then, again, I might have the potential of like spoiling a piece of content. And you know what? I really, really appreciate the suggestion.
Yeah.
It's one of those balances
it's hard to do.
I wish, we could help with that. But I think that's kind of like the way to have a true experience is it actually benefits with one person not knowing mythology at all and the other person's just trying really hard not to spoil things.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't even have actually access to the emails because Zach doesn't want me to get spoiled. So I'm like trying very hard to not find any spoilers whatsoever. Because I know these books have been out for a while, and like really we depend on me making guesses as to what's going to happen next. So I'm like very in the dark about certain things. And sometimes I could guess like whatever, like this chapter, like I made some guesses like, oh, maybe there might be something involved with Atlas, but like that's just like my best guess based on like some vague stuff I know about mythology. I don't know too much, and I think that's probably to my benefit right now. I think once it's revealed that something is based on mythology or whatever, like when they say, oh, Cece is actually Circe, Auntie M is actually Medusa, whatever, whenever these things come up, then I think it's fair to like look into that more once it's like not a spoilery thing, but it's hard to do that.
Yes, and it's also the idea of is like one of the things that people love about our show is that it's like the idea of to experience the book through another person's eyes for the first time, because it's like the idea of I really wish I could like eternal sunshine of the spotless mind my brain, and just forget all the books and then reread them again, experience it for the first time. That's
what I'm doing. Yeah, you're like living vicariously through me in some ways because you get to like see what my reactions are. And it's different too because I'm like an adult and I'm reading these for the first time as a 24, 25-year-old. So like that's my perspective. It's a little bit different than a 12-year-old who is like learning about this for the first time. It's interesting. I feel like in some ways I knew more about mythology when I was younger, but I've forgotten a lot of it as I've gotten older.
Well, yeah, because you put in like Anna Karenina and like all the series of unfortunate events references, like Herman Melville. Yeah,
right. That's where my brain is. I mean, if you learned every reference from unfortunate events, that would also be a heck of a concept, like an endeavor, I guess.
Thank you so much for that wonderful review. We really appreciate it. Abby, do we get any others?
We sure did. We got a lot of iTunes reviews this week. Another podcast review from The Marvelous Bean on iTunes, who said, "This podcast is truly the greatest. 5 stars. 3 smiley face emojis. I love this wonderful podcast. It always makes my day to see a new episode. I have loved Percy Jackson ever since my friends started obsessing over it and badgered me to read it. I can't wait for you to read Battle of the Labyrinth, as it was one of my favorites in the series. Once again, thanks for making this. I really appreciate it. Lightning emoji a bunch of times. I love it when B talks about their hedgehog." So yeah, so Pfeffernuss is a big hit among everybody. I think Pfeffernuss is doing okay right now. Just living his hedgehog little life. Very adorable.
Well, yeah, Pfeffernuss is actually currently on a business meeting in Tahiti. Hopefully we'll come back soon.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. He has a little suitcase. Anyway.
He also has like a 1980s businessman phone.
Yeah, working 9 to 5. Anyway, yeah.
That's a banner I want to see now.
Of business Pfeffernuss? Yeah, well, it's sort of like Waddles from Gravity Falls, like Business Pig and all the memes and stuff. Yeah. So if you guys want to make a business Pfeffernuss fan art, by all means do so.
We have another iTunes review from Will. "Love this podcast. Hey guys, I love this series so much and can't wait for y'all to reach the second series. Help me work through some stuff and love hearing y'all's opinion and ideas. It's so cool. You guys banter is so funny and I hope you never stop podcasting. Love from Idaho, Will." And then we have one more B. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah, another 5-star review from Cameron Batista says, amazing! I'm a huge fan of Percy Jackson. I am on the 4th book of the 2nd series, and I am in 4th grade. I love the funny reviews. Best podcast ever. Oh, so very sweet. Wow, 4th grade was so long ago. That's so amazing that you're listening to our show. I'm glad that you enjoy it. I hope you're enjoying the books.
That's amazing that you listen to our show, even in 4th grade. That's amazing. Like, it's weird to think of like the reach that we have for our show, and like people like listen from all over the world, different ages, different ideologies, and it's just one of those like wow.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, thank you for listening, you guys. Is that everything?
Yes, that is everything. I think that kind of wraps up the show. Where can they find you, B?
You can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman.
If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at Suda41, that's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. And if you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. You can also go to our Patreon/radiocamphalfblood. We're going to be having an episode up soon for Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. So you'll be able to hear our thoughts and opinions of that book. And
hear me talk about Gilmore Girls for way too long.
Yes, I was like listening back and I forgot how much you're talking about Gilmore Girls and the Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Gilmore Girls is the same as Ready Player One. That's my galaxy brain theory, and you guys got to listen to it to figure out what I mean.
Yeah, so simple $1, you can listen to it. If you donate a little more, you can actually suggest a book for us to read, and we'll totally read it on the air, and it will actually be
as
on
long
the
as
main
it's
feed,
like
and it's
within reason, right?
No, but yeah, the only book that I possibly would read that is not safe for work is, you know what, B? I would read Twilight.
Yeah, I guess Twilight has some spooky parts in it, but I mean, yeah, it's still YA though. It's still like PG-13, so like anything like that is fine. If you want us to read Twilight, you can make us do that if you donate.
Well, B, it's not that it's not safe for work. It's just like you're going to read it at work and people are going to make fun of you because it's not safe for work.
It's not safe for polite company because they're like, wow, you're a weirdo for reading that. Anyway, that's a bit judgmental, but you know, you can make us read all sorts of terrible YA if you want us to.
Oh, God, yeah. So just a couple $. He helps keep the lights on, and we'd really appreciate that. You also get like a shout out, and you get some other goodies if you join. The most I think you can pay is about $10 a month, and you get like a special pin, and it's really cool.
Special pin, I'll make it. It'll be really cool and Camp Half-Blood themed.
We also have t-shirts available at TeePublic, so just go to Radio Camp Half-Blood, and you can be able to buy one of our t-shirts and like rep some of our gear. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you could get our face on pretty much anything, really. Just any possible tote bag, a mug.
Tea cozy.
Maybe not a tea cozy. You can maybe use your t-shirt as a tea cozy, but other than that, I think phone cases, I think you might be able to get it on phone cases, depending on what phone you have. Like, you could literally get our cover art on basically anything.
Stickers, I know stickers are the cheapest. They're like $2.
Yeah, stickers are super cheap, and you could stick it on your laptop or on your wall or on a random phone pole and be like, hey, listen to this podcast. I'm not condoning that you do any sort of vandalism. Anyway, you get the idea.
Well, yes, so please don't do that. And if you do, we have no correlation to that whatsoever, and you can't legally hold us accountable for that. Well, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And keep staying mortal. Bye.
Bye, guys.